Hello and welcome to the Mindful Men podcast, a show helping men to open up about manhood. My name is Simon Rennie and my aim is to get men talking. From mental health to fatherhood and everything in between, Mindful Men creates a safe space for conversation. Now, before we get into this episode, I want to say a huge thank you for joining me. It means a world for you to join me and talk about men's issues. And if you love what you hear, please subscribe and share the episode with your mates. You can also join the conversation on Instagram and YouTube, and I'd love to connect with you there. But for now, sit back, relax, and let's get mindful. G'day guys, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Men podcast. I'm your host, Simon Rennie, and today we're getting mindful about kids' mental health and mindfulness as well. And joining me for that discussion, I've got Maryanne Eve. How are you going, Maryanne?
Good, Simon. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for being here. And you're from the outer north of Melbourne. When you say outer north, like how far out of Melbourne are you?
Look, probably about an hour out of the CBD. So outer north, it's still very suburban. I'm in a growth corridor, so lots of new estates and sort of new families. So it's a very kind of growing up and coming area, but kind of on the edge of Melbourne.
Yeah, awesome. And you're a mental health social worker and a private practice owner, and you've got Mindful Life Wellness.
Yes.
Wonderful. We'll explore all this today, and I'm really keen to unpack both the social work component and your private practice. But before we get started, I'd just like to hear a bit about you and where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the outer north of Melbourne, or have you got family? What's some of those key life events that have kind of led you towards where you are today?
Sure. So I grew up in New South Wales, lived in New South Wales till I was about 14, raised by a single mum. So I do have, a bit of a trauma, poverty history. Grew up in housing estates, in public housing. Moved to Melbourne as a teenager and didn't finish high school. Went on to work, I guess, for a little while and then did a youth work course. So sort of started in youth work, about 28 years ago, so showing my age now. And from youth work sort of went into disability, child protection, drug and alcohol, and then as a mature age student, started my social work degree at 28 and then made the crazy decision to have 2 babies while I was completing my social work degree. So I've been with my husband since we were 18, a very long time. And as I said, had my babies when I was completing my social work degree. I guess stayed in the helping profession after completing my social work degree, working in various organisations, and then started my private practice in 2011.
Wow. So, bit of a journey.
Accredited mental health social worker in 2011, and it really just feels like yesterday. It's crazy. So it was very part-time to begin with because I had 2 small children and I was doing other work. So, as you probably know, when lots of people go into private practice, they, I suppose, have their real paid job. So I was doing sort of, on salary, I suppose, working for different agencies and just dabbling in private practice initially, and then moved into full-time private practice, which was very scary. So I admire you, doing that so early in the piece. I did that in 2017, sort of went more full-time into private practice. And just basically, rented a room back then and then opened my clinic last year, so 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic, which was a bit crazy. It delayed it being built and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's been fantastic. So rebranded from being, I guess, just a sole trader to having a business called Mindful Life Wellness. And I guess in amongst all of that, I've got 2 kids, 2 adult kids, 18-year-old and a 22-year-old. And I very foolishly bought a puppy last year. I thought I'm going to get a therapy puppy. So I bought a puppy last year. And so she's been recently trained to come into the clinic and provide therapy to adults and kids as well. So yeah, busy stuff.
Yeah. I'd love to unpack your childhood a bit more before we get into the private practice stuff. And you said that you come from a bit of a trauma upbringing. Can you describe what you mean by trauma?
Well, I guess raised by a single mum, there's a history of family violence, and my mum had drug and alcohol issues. I had much older siblings who left when I was very young, so it was just my mum and I for a long time. So lots of poverty. Mum did the best she could at the time. And I guess when you become a professional helper yourself, it puts things in perspective. She did the best she could under the circumstances, she was living through. So she had her own trauma history. So yeah, I guess just lots of, poverty and neglect growing up as a child. And I suppose that made me want to do better, be better, help others, all that sort of stuff, which I know sounds very cliche, but I guess I quickly understood my way out of it all was to, work hard and study, even though I didn't complete year 12. But I suppose I understood, bigger picture that I'd be able to, study or work hard or do better. I had a sister who's 10 years older than me. So she was a bit of an example. She was a nurse and she did really well for herself. She left home very young. So yeah, I suppose she was a role model and yeah, just worked hard, I guess, started working as, a 17-year-old in childcare and then went on to do my youth work degree from there. So I learned that was the way out and helping others, I think, as I'm sure you know and understand, it gives you so much satisfaction and wanting, to make it better, for others. You don't want them to go through, I guess, what you've been through, or you use your own life experience as well. And then in 2009, my family and I lived through the King Lake Saturday bushfires. So there's sort of that another layer of trauma on top of that as well. We didn't lose our house or anything like that, but we lost a lot of friends and my children were very young. They were 4 and 8. So my children were very traumatized and I was working in mental health, clinical mental health at the time with CAMS, and so it's child and adolescent mental health, and they went in and did the recovery work. So it was really hard. I had to end up leaving that role, which was really quite sad because I loved it, but it was just, there was no escaping, the trauma, I guess. So
what was some of the impact for someone who wasn't around those bushfires? And I remember seeing them on TV, but like being there on the ground, what was it like living through it?
It was like a war zone. We fled with our kids and we would have been safe to stay, but we didn't know because, the messages weren't getting through. It was a long time ago. It's sort of 13 years ago. So I guess internet and communication was very different back then, but we fled to a nearby safe town and we weren't allowed back in for 2 weeks. But my husband went back in to kind of secure our property because there were looters and all that sort of stuff. But when we did go back in, it was like a war zone. It was just, they couldn't clean up because it was a crime scene. So there was forensics in there, white suits, and my children's school and childcare centre burnt down. So we had no school, no childcare, and I was off work, obviously caring for the kids, and the kids were severely traumatised. And so, yeah, it was hard. It was really, really hard. And, then losing, it was like 30 funerals we had to attend. So, all friends and whole families, and then explaining that to the kids. So, yeah, it was hard, but there was a lot of help, which was good, a lot of support. It took a long time to sort of get back on our feet. And I would say even 13, 14 years later, the effects are still felt.
Yeah.
You're seeing it in adults and in teens that were babies at the time. As you know, trauma can take a long time to manifest itself.
Yeah. How did you help your kids through it?
Well, look, love and support, but look, in hindsight, and you've got to have self-compassion, but I feel like I didn't do a very good job, to be honest, because I was dealing with my own trauma. So I guess I just did the best that I could. I was just there for them. But my youngest in particular, she was very, very affected. She was 4, so she wasn't sleeping. And so, yeah, obviously I had my social work hat off and my mum hat on. So I feel like I didn't do the best job at the time. But, I guess you just do, you just do what you can, with what you've got, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we can often beat ourselves up as parents who are also in the helping professions as well. Like we think we need to have it all the answers and it all sorted out. But even if you don't even work in the helping profession, as parents, we try to be that perfect parent. But I think, and we'll get to it a bit later and around strategies for parenting, children who are going through a bit of a challenge. I think we need to just give ourselves a bit of a break because, as you're saying, like whole families were going through this, not just kids. Yeah. Parents were trying to figure it out. Grandparents were trying to figure it out. The community was trying to figure out, work through it. And it's very traumatizing. I remember seeing it on TV. That was the one where they did all that massive, that comedian did all that financial charity aid, did she? Was that bushfire?
No, I think that was that might have been New South Wales. So it's 14 years ago. But look, there were things like the Wiggles coming up.
Yeah,
King
yeah.
Lake, you wouldn't know the area. So King Lake is a mountain community. So it's only about half an hour from here, but you need to go up the mountain. And basically it's a bit of a journey, and you're going up a windy hill around, and it's very isolated. So we had the Wiggles come up, we had John Farn, and we had Shane Warne, and we had, McDonald's trucks and KFC trucks and lots of celebrities. But look, it was brilliant. The army set up like a food tent. So we didn't have to cook dinner for about 4 months. We could just go to the army tent every night to get our dinner. So that was great. So the kids loved that. Can we go to the army tent and get dinner? I was like, yeah, great. I'm not cooking dinner. You just didn't want to go off the mountain. You just, I don't know, I get trauma, you just shut down and you can't do the basic stuff sometimes. So it was great that the government recognised that, and they just stuck the army up there making us dinner.
Yeah.
A few months, something as simple as that was just brilliant. No dishes, no shopping to do, and, nothing to have to worry about cooking. So
yeah, and it also brings, I guess, the community together in a public space where they can connect and help each other through that kind of moment as well.
Exactly.
I imagine.
And kids playing together, and it was brilliant.
Before we get into the social work, I love talking to parents, because I'm a dad myself. I've got a 5 and a 2-year-old, and
so you're in the big hour, aren't you?
We are. I just got back from school drop off, and the day started nicely, and then it turned really bad for about half an hour. Then it went good as well. So we've had it all just this morning. But what does it mean to you to be a mum?
What does it mean for me to be a mum? Oh, everything. I feel like I was put on this earth to be a mum, and that's just my opinion. I know that's not for every woman or every parent, but I feel like I was put on this earth to be a parent, to be a mum, and everything else is just extra. And my kids are 18 and 22, and I cry when I look at those baby photos. I just want that time back. So I hear you saying how busy and crazy it is. Please don't wish their lives away like I did. It's just the best time when they're little and they just look up to you and they love you and want to kiss and cuddle you, because once they're teenagers, they just don't want a bar of you. But, having said that, my kids are still my world, and, they mean everything to me. And my 22-year-old is doing, guess what, a social work degree.
Well, wonderful.
She's actually just halfway through her first placement. So she's doing Masters in Social Work, and she's doing it at Northern Health, which is just a branch of the local hospital. So she's got a fantastic placement in aged care. So she's loving it. So she's sort of coming home and talking all about cognitive deficits and dementia and, all that sort of stuff. So it's so interesting. It's stuff that I've never, I guess it's not a field of practice that I've ever dabbled in, aged care stuff. So so proud. And then my other daughter is doing a body piercing apprenticeship. So it's very different. So we're really, really proud of her as well. So they're my world. They mean everything to me. And I guess, when I look back at my childhood, I feel like I have gained a lot of healing through becoming a mum. I don't always get it right. I'm the first to say that. And, I know I probably bring, a lot of my childhood in at times. You can't help. I think you try not to do that. But, we all become our parents in a way, or bring in stuff that we're not proud of. But again, you've got to have that self-reflection and compassion, I suppose.
Is there a certain part of motherhood that's comes to mind when you think about being a mum, like with your daughters, like the first day of school, or was it childbirth, or was it
probably
anything
childbirth in those first couple of years, and just still the quality time you get to spend with them, and forget about the housework, forget about all that other stuff, just being present, being with them. And we did a lot of that. We were very hands-on. We went to the zoo and the farm, and lots of, I guess, all that sort of quality time, lots of family holidays, and then they just turn into teenagers and they're just alien to you. So
do they come back around in adulthood?
Well, funny you should say that. About 19, and they get to about 19. So my 18-year-old, she's just turned 18, so she's kind of coming around. So she's working, she's finished school and stuff. So so the 22-year-old, she's a little adult, and sometimes she parents us, I think. So
don't worry, my 2-year-old's doing that at the moment. My 5-year-old definitely.
Yeah. It's funny, the 22-year-old is doing this social work degree. She kind of pulls me up on stuff. Mom, you can't say that. You can't do that. I'm like, oh, I qualified 19 years ago. Things must have changed. So, she's giving me a bit of accountability, so.
It's like a bit of internal supervision.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. She actually works she does my admin, which I'm missing because she's on placement. She hasn't done admin for me now for a month. But yeah, so she's usually my Friday admin person, which is great.
Love it, love it. So I'd love to hear why social workers get into social work, particularly. I know you've got your upbringing, but what was the moment where you go, I'm going to go study social work and then become a social worker?
I don't know. I guess when I learnt that it's more about the individual, the social worker looks at so many other aspects, the connection as well. Like I'm all about connection, attachment, so all of that sort of stuff. And I guess that there's so many fields of practice that you can go into. As my daughter was saying when she completed an arts degree in legal studies and sociology, and she said every single job I've looked at wants social work. So she said, whether you want to be a counsellor or whether you want to work in youth justice or, anywhere really as a helper, they want social work. So I guess I just knew it was such a broad field of practice. And being a youth worker, I started as a youth worker, was kind of the next logical step. And yeah, within, I don't know, a month of lectures, I thought this is for me. I mean, there's a lot of boring stuff. Because it was an undergraduate degree. So first year was very boring, which I think is very different to a master's. If you do a master's, keep in mind I studied a long time ago. If you do a master's, I think you just do the 2 years post.
Yeah.
So I guess undergraduate was your 4 years and the first 2 years are just boring. But there's a lot of good stuff too, of course. But I just within a couple of months or a month or so of lectures, I thought this is what I want to do.
And you did that as a mature age student?
Yes, I was 28. Going into lectures with like 18-year-olds who talked and you're like, I'm here to learn. So yeah, I'd be sitting up the front all studious and heavily pregnant, like the whole degree, like I was pregnant pretty much because I had both my babies in that time. So deferred a couple of times. It took me 7 years to complete.
Yeah.
But I worked along the way, so that was fine. So my first placement, I got a job out of it and continued working there till I had my baby. And then my second placement, I got a job as well. So, yeah, just none of it. No, I enjoyed studying while I was pregnant. It was hard, but yeah.
Yeah. How was it studying and navigating family life? Because I did the same. So when I started in 2018, I did straight into the master's program. And I think our son Gus, he was 1 at the time, and then halfway through we had Pippa as well, and just navigating life as a parent, but also had my 9 to 5 that I was working as well. So I was doing all this part-time and stuff. It was really difficult. So how did you manage it?
Yeah, the same as you, I'm sure. Like it was really, really hard. Both kids were in childcare. Fortunate my husband has his own business, so he could be flexible with his hours. And obviously financially he's supported me. But I was like you, I pretty much worked as much as I could around being pregnant, having babies and studying. But childcare was my absolute friend from a young age with kids. And I studied part-time. So whilst it took a long time, to knock the degree over, studying part-time was the way I had to go. But look, the placements, as you know, are a challenge because they're, what are they, 500 hours each time, and you're just like, oh God, like this is just, I don't know how anyone does it without any financial support. So yeah, it was hard. And kids, as you know, kids get sick. So I think I had days off placement that I had to make up at the end. And when you're going through it, you're like, oh God, is this worth it? Is it ever going to end? But I look back and I say it was so worth it, because here I am at 50. I started my own practice at 40, sort of similar to you, I suppose. And now at 50, I've got this thriving practice that, is doing so well. And the sky's the limit. I'd never go back to working for someone else, because the freedom, as you know, the freedom of private practice is just incredible.
Yeah, and I'm only a few months into my private practice, and I'm feeling that freedom already, and very similar. I don't know if I could go back and work for somebody else.
That's right. Yeah, slotting things in between clients, dropping kids off or doing, whatever you have to do, an appointment yourself, or, Pilates next door to my clinic. I just go to Pilates between clients. And
nice. I go bug my wife. She'll work again at home as well, so I just go bug her.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what I'm interested, why mental health social work? Why were you interested in working in this particular field, and more specifically, working with children as well?
Well, look, I guess from the degree, I did a couple of years in community health, and then I had someone from CAMS get in contact with me, child and adolescent. I don't know if you use that acronym there. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a bit of an outdated acronym. I don't think we use it here anymore. So I'm showing my age again. But child and adolescent mental health, someone approached me and asked if I was interested in applying for a job there. So I kind of fell into it. So that was clinical mental health with kids, and I was so green. I had no idea. And the psychiatrist made me cry probably 3 or 4 times because I had no idea what I was doing. So I was very much trained on the job, 2 years out from uni. And but I rose to the task. I could write reports, I could do assessments and all that sort of eventually, and do therapy. And I guess I just realised that there was such a gap and such a need for children's mental health. And in reflection, as a kid, I probably had severe anxiety. And I realised and I live with anxiety now, but I didn't realise even what anxiety was until I started my social work degree, really, sort of 18, 19 years ago. So, yeah, I guess I thought, well, look, kids, there's so much help that's needed for kids. There's such gaps in services. And at the time I was living in King Lake, which is a rural community, and where I got the job at CAMS was rural as well. So, yeah, that passion for helping people who are isolated and rural. So kind of fell into that, which was a blessing because, as you know, you need to do 2 years clinical mental health before you can gain your accreditation to work in private practice.
Yeah.
So it's just, the universe, the stars aligned. Someone was looking after me. I fell into that job, stayed there for a couple of years, and then from there moved into child protection, which was an incredible job where we walked the streets called Streetworks, and we sought out missing kids that were prostituting, and got them back home. So we worked with police, resi units and stuff. And then from there, I thought I'm going to start a private practice. Child protection out a little bit, and I thought I'll start a private practice. And I guess just, I don't know, in liaising with GPs, I'd sort of talk about my CAMS experience, and they kind of identified, well, you've got experience in working with kids. And so it just kind of built from there. So whilst I wouldn't say I'm an expert or anything like that, like I think I've got the knowledge and the skills. I kind of cut my teeth assessing kids, working alongside a psychiatrist at CAMS. So I learned a lot there. And then I also did 2 years on New South Wales Mental Health on their clinical mental health line, so assessment, crisis, that sort of stuff. So I did a bit more mental health there. So mental health's sort of always been my passion, I suppose. My mother had mental health issues, which I didn't really know or understand until I become a social worker.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that understanding came for me as well when I became a social worker is like mental health's only been a real discussion in my household, and for me and my wife for the last 10 years. It's only been 10 years since I went into that GP office and said, I think I've got mental health issues. So, and a lot became clearer was during my social work studies, which was only 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now, where I can go, okay, this is what mental health is. This is what mental illness is. And this is the crossover between the two. And this is how I'm positioned in the world and how the world's impacting me as well. And it's only a relatively new discussion. And you saying it seems like very new to you as well.
Yeah.
But I'm interested, like with your child protection work, like as a dad myself, like child protection is the one place where I would love to work into it in that area. I think it would be interesting work, but I would never do it because I'm a dad. And the thought of, children not being with their parents or experiencing trauma and abuse through parents or their family life. Did that something that triggered you as a parent, like when you were working in that space?
Look, I think for many people, and I say this to my daughter because I think she's interested in child protection, and I don't like to put my experiences on other people, but I do feel like it can be a time-limited role. So I guess I went into child protection thinking if I last 12 months, I'll be happy. So I lasted 2 years, but it was very triggering. We were working with kids who were in residential care, who had trauma histories. So I saw a lot of myself in these kids. So it's difficult. And look, child protection do the best they can. I'm sure it's the same every state, but they're very strapped for resources. There wasn't a lot of supervision. I requested social work supervision. They just kind of looked blankly at me. Didn't even know what that was. And so, I didn't get a lot of supervision and support, and working under the Act is just debilitating. Like there's so many restrictions, and we were calling in warrants. You see a kid call in a warrant, can't we talk to them first, please? Let us talk, try and get them back to their placement. Nah, they've been missing for a week, call in a warrant, get the police to pick them up. So a lot of it conflicted with my social work values. And yes, absolutely triggering. I'd go home to my own kids and I'd think, God, I was just, my daughter was 12, 13 at the time, and I just picked up a 12, 13-year-old sex worker, off the street. So, yeah, you just think, God, this could be my daughter,
Yeah.
And it's, very, but then, I guess it makes you so passionate and so willing to help, and so I don't know, it's that double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I guess so, and even in the mental health space as well, like we can be really passionate about this stuff, but it also can be very triggering.
Yes.
And particularly in the private practice space, how much do you lean on an external supervisor to help you through some of those challenging discussions that you have?
Yeah, regular supervision is a must. And I have a colleague, so I share, I have someone who rents one of my rooms in my clinic, and she's a teacher, but she's also a specialist autism educator. So she helps me with a lot of my hard cases, a lot of difficult kids, and I help her out with some of the mental health stuff. So there's kind of that leaning on each other as a colleague. But yeah, external supervision, absolutely, and understanding when, transference is happening or counter-transference, and just that self-reflection. I think the most important thing with social work is, our reflective practice. And that's what I love about social work. We're always learning and we're always reflecting, what can we do better? What could we have done differently? Yeah, which I think is just brilliant. That's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Now let's talk about private practice and what you do with the kids that walk through your door. As a dad, working with kids can be extremely amazing. But also extremely challenging as well, like trying to get them to open up or follow tasks and all that type of stuff. And so tell us a bit about how you approach your practice with children, and without identifying any private information about your clients, like what's some of the broader trends? Like, is it bullying? Is it climate change? Are any kids worried about climate change?
Yeah, a lot of the teens. Yeah, my 18-year-old talks a lot about climate change. It's a popular concern. So look, yes, I work with kids probably from as young as 3 right up to 17. And the most predominant issue is anxiety. So since I opened my practice in 2011, I have been dealing with anxiety endlessly, and obviously after lockdowns. So as you're probably aware, Melbourne had the longest and strictest lockdown of anywhere in the world. Anxiety has gone through the roof. So I'm seeing lots and lots of separation anxiety in kids, so kids not wanting to go to school, and lots of bedtime anxiety as well. And kids not wanting to do, certain milestones, like not wanting to go on camp, not wanting to go to sleepovers or play dates, and just really, attached to parents as well. Yeah, so I guess in terms of the way I work with these kids, lots of parental involvement, so some parent coaching. The work is very gentle with kids. Like obviously with kids, you're not going to sit opposite, in a chair opposite each other and talk. I mean, some kids do want to do that, believe it or not. Like your 12, 13-year-olds do want to sit and have a chat. But I also have my program room. I've got my counselling room and my program room where I run Kids Mindfulness, and we can sit in there and we can draw, we can build, we can, play games, we can play, I can bring Tilly, the therapy dog, in. So the therapy is very gentle, I guess, lots of hands-on stuff, if that sort of makes sense. And then I also, with my individual work, I also inject a bit of the mindfulness stuff, relaxation strategies as well with kids. And look, kids at a primary school age, what I try to do, if it's appropriate, I'll see them for 2 or 3 times, and then I'll move them across to my group program if I feel that it fits. And, as I said earlier, lots of parent coaching, so teaching parents, essentially the parent should be the child's therapist in a sense. Like I know they're not qualified or, they haven't done the degree or whatever, but you're with your child more than anyone else. So if you've got the tools, if someone can teach you what to do with your child at bedtime, then obviously that's going to be far more helpful than me just working, with a child. I think gone are the days in therapy where parents just push their kids through the door and say, fix them. I mean, some parents still do that. And I'm very clear at the outset that I need parental involvement, because some kids come in, like when parents do push them through the door and you'll say, so how's your week been? Fine. So what are we working on today? I don't know. And you're just like, and then the parent will say to you, they'll email you at the end or something. So did he tell you that he punched his brother out, that he smashed a window, that he did this, that? And you're like, no. So, yeah, getting that feedback, which can be confronting, parents coming in and talking about, what kids have been up to. But I'm very upfront with kids and parents at the start.
Yeah.
Way that it works. So I guess with anxiety, getting kids to understand what anxiety is all about, teaching them all about fight or flight, what's happening in their body, what the feelings mean. I guess I use that kind of narrative approach where I talk about anxiety being like a monster. I've got a lot of books that talk about that externalizes the anxiety, and that anxiety can wear many disguises, whether it's the disguise of, you can't go to school or you can't go to bed on your own. So teaching kids to identify that this is anxiety.
Yeah.
And how to work with that, teaching them to be the boss of their anxiety.
Yeah.
I think is the most thing.
You mentioned attachment before, and I was wondering, do you dabble much in the attachment theory and how that's impacted with kids growing up and then their relationship with their parents and stuff like that, or is it more broader than that?
Well, look, probably a bit more broader, but having said that, many of the kids I work with have fractured attachments or insecure attachments. So it may be that a parent's left or a parent's been in and out, or that mum or dad have their own mental health issues. So, as you know, as a social worker, we can become appropriately an attachment figure for the client, whether it be the child or even an adult. We can, help them, repair that. We can be that positive role model and that positive attachment. So, yeah, look, I guess therapy with kids is all about engagement and becoming that sort of attachment figure, I guess. I mean, I guess you've got to be careful working with parents. And I think parents know. They'll say something like, look, I know my mental health has affected my parenting or my relationship with my child. Or, I think just being very clear with parents of what your role is, that you're not there to replace them or anything like that, but you can become that significant.
Yeah.
Significant attachment figure. I mean, it'd be like your kids going to childcare, and my kids still talk about their childcare as, how that was such a positive in their life.
Yeah. How do you approach a child that's really struggling to open up? Like, you can't really break through that barrier, and what's some of the strategies that you use?
Yeah, look, hard. And I guess you've got to not make it about yourself. Like, some therapists might be like, oh, God, I'm just not good enough, or I can't do this, or imposter syndrome might creep in. I shouldn't be working with kids or whatever. A lot of the time for kids, it's just about building trust. And it may be that they've had other people in their life who have tried too hard or have let them down. So, yeah, look, the first 2 or 3 sessions could be playing Jenga or or yeah, just, I guess, a bit more hands-on, doing some colouring. And even, I guess, understanding that you may not get into the therapy until many sessions in. So it might be talking about footy for the whole first session and I don't know, watching some stuff on YouTube with them. And it's about speaking their language too. That might be like, I want to play this game with you. And you might be like, what? It's not really therapy. But engagement, as you know, being a social worker, we're first and foremost about engagement, connection, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, and look, I've had kids who I can't break through, but parents say they still want to come. So you're like, let's persist.
Yeah. So, and I guess there's a moment in time where they start to open up, and it might take a long time, and then they all of a sudden just go, okay, it's a safe space here. I can start to talk.
That's right. But some kids don't even get it as well. They might be like, I just feel worried about going to school. And if you're like, well, why? Tell me why. What's happening at school? There may be nothing. It just may be that they were used to having mum around because mum was home for 6 months in lockdown. And, they were at home in their little cocoon, and now they've got to go out into the world. You and I have got the language for that, but they don't.
Yeah.
it's just like, I just don't want to go to school. So sometimes trying to get kids to open up about why things are so, it's very hard. I guess myself as an adult, like I said, I didn't understand a lot of the stuff I went through as a child until I became an adult. So,
And even then, as a parent as well, when you become a parent, things
yes,
go, oh, okay, the penny drops as well
that's
for that
right.
kind of thing.
So I guess in that situation, sitting and colouring, being that support, because you need to show the child that you're going to be there no matter what. Oh, this is too hard. So she's going to leave me. She's not going to see me anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned like you've got some group-based programs as well, so you might transition some kids across to the group-based stuff. Is that the mindfulness stuff that you're talking about, or is that something different?
No, so that's kids mindfulness.
Yeah. So let's explore that. Like, tell us all about kids mindfulness, because on Mindful Men, I love mindfulness-based practice. It's really helped me as an adult. But how do you do it with kids? Yeah, talk us through that.
So I started Kids Mindfulness mid-2018. So just a very brief history. I'd lost some funding at the start of 2018. So there was this funding where clients were fully funded and there was no gap to pay. So the government withdrew that funding, and I'd had that funding since 2011. So for 7 years, I'd seen many, many clients under that funding, and they withdrew that funding. And so pretty much I lost most of my clients. So I was at risk of my business closing down. And I literally woke up one day and thought, I'm just going to run a group program. So I started with 4 kids, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'd done a Buddhist retreat 2 years before. I thought, we did a bit of breathing. We laid down and we had a bit of quiet time, and I don't know, I'll just do something. So I had a few kids I was seeing at the time, and I just said to their parents, look, throw $20 at me and I'll put your kids through this group. And I had, obviously a loose program that I sent out to them. It went really well. And then before long, I'd filled it. I had 8 kids. And then within a month, I had 2 groups, and then 3 groups, and then 4 groups. And it just went berserk, basically. And so I guess I rejigged and remodeled the program over time, and I started to get some more difficult presentations. So kids with ADHD, kids with autism were coming to the program. So I was very out of my depth there for a little bit. But I went into yoga, kids yoga course, which kind of taught me how to structure my program, I guess, just short, sharp activities. So I kind of restructured the program, and then it just took off from there. It was so successful, and I was seeing such fantastic results with kids. So at the moment, it's only running 3 days a week. It was running 4 days a week. So since going back after COVID, numbers are down a little bit. But what do we do in class? So there's a lot of breath work. So just teach kids simple, breathing exercises, things like, 5-finger breathing, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. So just that, so something as simple as that, basically. Some little bite-sized pieces of breath work. We do a little bit of basic yoga. We do some education. So it's a really important part of the program. So it is a CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy-based program. So we do a little bit of CBT education or mindfulness education. So each class has a theme. So we might do thoughts one week, emotions next, positive affirmations, gratitude, kindness, compassion, impermanence. So there is a bit of a Buddhist leaning, but it's not religious or anything like that. So the education component, we read a book or watch a short video, and then I take them through a guided meditation, and then we do a bit of a fun activity at the end. So it's 60 minutes. So I've got a program that I've written up, and I now sell that program to other health professionals and teach them how to run it as well. So I've put 170 kids through over 4 years. So we did have a few breaks over COVID, which was very, very sad. And interestingly enough, you'll love hearing this. My mental health, not love hearing that my mental health deteriorated, but it's really interesting. In fact, my mental health deteriorated markedly when I wasn't teaching the program.
Yeah.
So, obviously we're in lockdown and stuff as well, but teaching the program just fills my cup, because you've got these little beautiful innocent kids aged from 4 to 12 who are just, many of them just clean slates, and they just hang on every word and just love everything that you teach them. So yeah, kids are really receptive to the program.
Wonderful. And do you do like certain age groups, or is it just a mixed bag of any kids?
Well, look, I would love to. I think ideally it'd be good to do sort of 4 to 8 and then,
Hmm.
9 to 12, but I just don't have the time. So I do, sort of prep, which I think that's our first year of school, prep to grade 6, which, it's not ideal, but it works. You have
Hmm.
older kids role modeling to the younger kids. Some of the content might be a bit young for the older kids and a bit old for the younger kids, if that sort of makes sense. So when
Yeah.
I teach others how to run the program, I do recommend, if they can, having like a junior and an older group.
Hmm.
But yeah, look, it works. It works fine.
So what about with, like you said, you even some other therapists, you started to train other therapists
Yeah.
in the program. How has that taken off? Like what's been the I guess the response from other therapists in the program?
Well, when I first started running it was interesting. It's that old cliche of first they'll criticize you and then they'll join you. So I had a couple of psychologists message me and say, why are you teaching kids meditation? Like, why are you accredited? Should you be doing this? And I said, well, it's an unaccredited field. You don't need to be accredited to teach meditation. And I said, it's just targeted relaxation strategies. It's a guided meditation. It's basically all I'm doing. So I think people were very curious about what I was doing because I was posting a lot of marketing videos and stuff. So look, I don't think they were being critical. I think they were just kind of like, what's going on here? Why are you doing this? Because it's, I think we've moved forward a lot with mental health and different strategies and all that sort of stuff, but it was still a bit outside the box, I guess, 4 years ago. But then people were interested, like, I would love to do this. You're willing to sell the program? And I wasn't happy just to sell the program. I wanted to teach others. I wanted to show them what to do. So I run a 2-day course a couple of times a year where I put people through and they actually get to participate, like they're the kids, I'm the teacher, in 4 classes, which is very fun. And so I teach them basic CBT, I teach them mindfulness education, I teach them a bit about basic meditation and breath work. So I guess there's a bit of education. I teach them about attachment, therapeutic alliance and connection and that sort of stuff, and the value of group work. So with that, I think I've put 36 people through. We had to cancel a couple of those courses over lockdown. So 36 people are now running their own kids mindfulness meditation programs, or preparing to, or they're running them in schools, childcare centres and all that sort of stuff as well. So I've got a little closed group on Facebook where we share ideas and support each other.
Sounds
So
wonderful. Yeah.
it is wonderful. And I had people saying, oh my God, like you're sharing your intellectual property. How can you feel comfortable about that? And I said, oh, look, honestly, there's enough to go around. I said,
Mm.
most terms I've got a wait list. I want hundreds of kids to get this program. I grew up having no idea, how to deal with the stuff I was going through. You can teach kids these very natural strategies, teach kids that their breath is always there, that they can not pay attention to their thoughts if their thoughts are troubling, that they can let them go. If we can teach kids compassion and empathy and teach them basic meditation, we're going to be equipping them, for a better adolescence, to be better adults. And yeah, I'm really passionate about that. So I'm like, I'll just train as many people as possible to spread the word. Like it's what it's all about.
I love that sharing it because you mentioned wait lists, and there's a lot of wait lists around the country for mental health services.
Yeah.
I've got lots of availability if anybody wants to give me a call.
Yeah.
But yeah, but sharing it is a great way just to get more people through the practice, and you'll still have your wait list, but other people can then
Right.
fill up their books and say, I've got this capacity to do this amazing stuff, and then
Yes.
connect with you in your closed Facebook group and share your word as well, like through their
Right.
practices. I think it's a really wonderful thing you're doing.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, I love it. Look, eventually my plan is to not do one-on-one work because
Mm.
I've done this work for 28 years. So after lockdown, I was very, very burnt out because I remained open. I have a lot of suicidal clients. So I was able to remain open. I did a lot of telehealth. The clinic was still open for high-risk clients. So I was very, very burnt out. But that's the core of my work, the one-on-one work. But eventually I will let that go. I'll employ someone and I'll just do the group work because I
Yeah.
just love it. so much. And the relationship I have with the kids, it's a safe space for them. Lots of kids open up in the group environment. Groups are wonderful because you might have some difficult presentations, and then you've got other kids who are role modeling appropriate behaviors, and then those kids rise to that, and it's a great environment to work in. Yeah, love it.
Yeah. What about with some of the parents? So, like, we often think about parenting, and we've talked a little bit about it today, like about, we grew up in times where we didn't necessarily have that parental figure that really nurtured us and sheltered us from the trauma that we did experience. And they did the best that they could with the tools that they had on hand. So for parents in there, I've heard in the last few years this concept around good enough parenting, and letting go of being this perfect parent, and sometimes acknowledging when we get it wrong and being okay with getting it wrong. What's your thoughts on this, and how can parents kind of move away from helicopter parenting and just give themselves a break?
Absolutely. And I love that good enough parenting term. I use that a lot with parents. I think it's just so important that we do the best that we can at the time. And I think it's so important to be honest with your kids. I'm sorry I got it wrong today. I shouldn't have yelled. I'm going to do better tomorrow. We talk a lot about, there's a lot of talk in the past about kids respecting elders. We need to give kids the respect as well. It's that mutual respect, I think, which is so important. So teaching parents that if they're calm, they can share their calm with their children. So yeah, a lot of the time I guess we reparent ourselves when we parent our children. It's so hard, such a hard job. And I think teaching parents to have that self-compassion, and you talk about the helicopter parenting. Like, I think it's so important to get across to parents that we're teaching kids to be adults. We're not raising kids to be kids. Like, I know they're kids, but the end goal is for them to be an independent adult. So yeah, giving kids that little bit of freedom and trust, and yeah, having faith in your parenting, that the way you've parented is going to make your kids confident and independent and give them the skills that they need. I think we can project a lot of our own stuff onto our kids, which is hard, and you often don't know that you're doing it.
That's like you go on auto. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. And so on that note, how do you maintain being a mum? Like, when you were, going through this, and so you'd go to work, be the therapist, be the social worker, come home, be the mum. Did you balance that? Like, instead of being the therapist at home, but also not being too much of a mum, like, how did you balance all that?
Well, I think at times, Simon, I haven't done a great job of that. And I think really acknowledging that and being aware. So, there's times where I was really working hard to build my practice up. I was working on the phones on Beyond Blue, and I was also doing private practice, working 2 or 3 nights a week. And you'd see the cracks. You'd see your kids doing. Yeah, you get this sense of, my God, I'm helping others more than I'm helping my own kids. So I think as soon as you acknowledge something, you can make a change. Like, I know, look, awareness doesn't always equal behavior change, but as soon as you can acknowledge, then the opportunity is there to make a change. So I think owning it and then stripping back. And I think that's the beauty of private practice. If your kids are struggling, like, kids last years of school, I'd strip back my work hours to be more available for kids. So, you've got that ability to do that. But again, having that kind of self-compassion and just being honest with your kids, I think, is really important. And yeah, back to the good enough parenting or good enough mother.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess, like, that close work you do with the parents that come into your clinic as well, is that they might have not got it right as well, but then you working with them and then working with the children as well can recreate the team environment that they've probably been missing in their homes.
That's right. And I think a lot of parents just need that reassurance that they're on the right track. Yeah, a lot of parents come into me, particularly with things like sleep. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, I'm doing that anyway, or. So, and with anxiety, I think it's very hard. It's a fine line between pushing kids to do stuff and avoidance. So just helping parents around, that sort of stuff.
Well. Now you're on the socials, and you've got your YouTube channel as well. I'd love you to talk us through your socials, because not many therapists are so actively on social media and particularly have their own YouTube. I think we're one of a few. But yeah, it is.
YouTube come about in lockdown. So and look, I live and work in the same community, which is good, but it can have its negatives as well. So during lockdown, I'd run into my Kids Mindfulness kids in the supermarket and they'd come up and hug me in the middle of a pandemic. I miss Kids Mindfulness. So I created a Kids Mindfulness YouTube channel. So it's literally me, like play school, just doing the class to the screen for my Kids Mindfulness kids. So that's kind of the extent of my YouTube channel. So just Kids Mindfulness Meditations, I think it's called, Kids Mindfulness, something like that. So yeah, I think there's about 10 episodes on there. So it was specifically for my Kids Mindfulness kids. So that they, weren't missing out. I had a lot of requests to do Zoom classes, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I just thought, 10 kids on Zoom, not lying down. And I just thought I wouldn't be able to let go. There you go. That's not a very good mindfulness practice. It stressed me out. So I just created the YouTube channel. I also created my Kids Mindfulness podcast.
Yeah, talk us through the podcast, because I haven't heard the podcast yet, but I have seen the YouTube
so look,
channel.
I've got 2 podcasts. The adult one's inactive. I haven't added anything to that for a couple of years. So the adult one is Mindful Life Podcast, which I created sort of back in 2019. So that one's a bit quiet. I just haven't had the time to add to it. But the Kids Mindfulness one, again, I created in lockdown because kids were missing me so much. So I just basically am reading out my guided meditations that I read in class with a bit of background music, and the odd dog bark or door bang or whatever, because it's just on my phone. It's nothing too professional. And so I created it for my Kids Mindfulness kids, and then it went viral, and I had people contacting me, asking me if I wanted to improve the sound quality. And I'm just like, honestly, it's not anything. It's just for fun. Like, it's just for the kids I work with. So it's done really well. It's had like 350,000 downloads.
Wow.
I think that's because kids just listen to it on repeat. I've got kids that tell me they've listened to the same episode, 100 times or whatever. So, yeah, really popular, and they're constantly asking me to add to it. So kids I work with pester me all the time to add to it. So I just haven't had the time. So that's, just to help kids with sleep, basically, and to be calm and to relax. So there's some CBT strategies in that, but mainly some mindfulness and breathing techniques. So things like, you're in a fairy forest, and so just encouraging them to use their imagination and to relax their bodies, do some breathing.
Yeah, I really love the concept around the sleep stuff, because we listen to ABC podcasts or something at night time. I'll lay in bed with Gus and help him drift off to sleep as well. And it's really, and I'm sitting there actually thinking, oh, this is really cool. Like, and I'm listening to it as a dad, and it's a really cool thing.
Say they do listen to it. So there's one I've done called Backpack of Worries, where they just have to visualize their worries in a backpack and then they just toss them out to the wind. And I've had a few parents say, oh God, that really helped me in lockdown. And I'm like, oh, that's great. It was designed for kids, but if it helped you. So, and that's really good, because then parents can sort of say to the kids, your mummy found that really helpful, and have those discussions, which I could never have imagined, my mother having those discussions with me, because she just didn't have that knowledge. So I think we have come a long way. And, with this work I do with the kids, with mindfulness, I'm preaching to the choir. Like, I think the parents bring their kids because they believe in it. So, and look, there is a lot of evidence, as you probably know, to suggest that mindfulness and meditation, it's evidence-based. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that it is very helpful, with pain, with anxiety, with depression, and, lots of other stuff, just well-being, just day-to-day life, meditate down yourself. So I think it can be very helpful, for everyone.
Yeah. Now, your private practice, we've talked a lot about kids, but before we head off, you do work with adults as well?
I do, yeah. So look, most of my work, not most, look, it's probably half. I work with lots of adults as well. So I take my referrals from GPs, because I'm an accredited mental health social worker. I can work under Medicare, and I also see clients under NDIS as well. I've phased out TAC work cover, victims of crime, simply because they're very slow payers.
Yeah.
So it's just really hard to keep chasing up money. Basically, that's just a whole, admin thing. I mean, we are a business as well. Yeah, so mainly Medicare private clients and NDIS. And look, incidentally, my Kids Mindfulness program is now 70% NDIS funded kids.
Yeah.
So the client group has really changed, which has been really interesting. So the classes can be a challenge to teach sometimes.
Now, for anybody who's not sure what NDIS is, can you give us a quick run through of what it is very
Yep.
broadly? I have talked about it on the show, but if this is the first time someone's tuning in, and what's some of the disabilities that you work with particularly?
So look, I'm no expert on NDIS, and I know you've got a background in working with the NDIS, so I'm going to give a very broad summary. So look, NDIS is the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So it's funding for people with a disability, whether it be physical or cognitive. So I can basically work with self or plan managed clients. So there's different ways clients can be funded. I can't work with agency managed clients because I'm not agency registered. I don't even know if that's the right language to use.
Yep, close enough.
Yeah. So self and plan managed I can work with. And yeah, so basically with self-managed, the client will pay me and they'll be reimbursed. And then plan managed, I have to send my invoices to the plan manager. So I mainly have kids who have autism coming in under the NDIS, but there's lots and lots of comorbidities. So these kids may have ADHD, they might have some obsessive compulsive behaviours as well, depression and anxiety. I also get a lot of kids with ADHD as well. So kids can come in privately to the program where they just pay, upfront out of pocket, or they can come in under a mental health care plan where Medicare will pay for about half. Which is great news for parents because Medicare can fund half of the Kids Mindfulness program, and then obviously NDIS is fully funded.
Yeah. And for any parents who are out there who haven't accessed a mental health care plan, they can just get a referral from their GP, can they?
Sure, yeah. So referral mental health care plan is kind of the same thing. You go along to your GP with your child, talk about what the difficulties are that your child's presenting with. And with that mental health care plan, that will give the child 20 counselling sessions currently, because the sessions have been increased under COVID. So 20 one-on-one sessions and 10 group work sessions. So the rebate for one-on-one is $79.05, and then the rebate for group is, I think, $22.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, so it's about half back.
Yeah, and that's adults as well. Adults, obviously.
Yeah, adults as well. Yeah, so it's a little known fact that your mental health care plan can give you group work rebates.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, wonderful. And do you have any group programs for adults, or is it just kids?
I have done in the past, not as popular. And look, it's hard. I don't know if you've ever run groups or you plan to, but it can be hard getting them off the ground, and you might get 2 or 3 people. And so look, Kids Mindfulness is very, very established. It runs by the term and it just kind of turns over like clockwork. I guess lots of kids stay on. I get new kids coming in. Yeah, it can be quite hard to kind of get groups up and running for adults. And also you've got to sort of make it worth your while. Again, running financial.
Definitely.
I have run businesses. I have run groups before. I have run retreats and that sort of stuff. But again, it's finding the time.
Yeah, and you mentioned like running a business as well, social work. There's a lot of chat in the social work space, particularly when I was going through uni, like that social workers aren't in it for the income, they're in it for the outcome. And as a private practice owner, you are in it for the income because that's how you pay your mortgage and put food on the table and put clothes on your back as well. Briefly, without opening up another can of worms, what's your thoughts on that? Like, I see income as a bit of a form of self-care, and without income, we can't be looking after ourselves and our families. Absolutely. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think it can be controversial, and sometimes you are chasing clients for fees, and clients can become quite annoyed. Yeah, it's about finding that balance, I guess. And look, maybe it's about getting admin to deal with that. Passing that off to someone else. But look, I'm very clear. I have, terms of service that clients need to agree to, and a few things in place, around prepayments and stuff. But it's a very difficult subject, and it's one that creates a lot of anxiety. When you're having to chase clients for money. So I think, if you set up your processes early and you're very clear from the start, but value what you do.
Yeah.
Like there's so many memes that go around that talk about, people sort of say, is that what you charge for an hour? Well, no, that's what I'm charging for my 4-year degree plus my 32 years of experience. So I think if your fees are really low, people might be like, is this person really that good? Like, And sometimes you hear someone's fees are, I don't know, like something that seems crazy, like $500 an hour, and you think, shit, they must be good. They must be hard to get into. And I think, it's so important to value what you do and your own expertise and, what you've accumulated in terms of your, experience and knowledge.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you've got to pay your bills. My rent for my commercial lease, and it's a cheap one where I am, it's $33,000 a year.
Wow.
So that's cheap. There's some that are people that have huge clinics are paying 50 to 70,000 a year. So Simon, stick to your telehealth.
Oh, I think I will for a little while. I'm renting
lucky I can, if you can sublet a room, that makes a difference because you've got some machine costs. But at the end of the day, there's always talk about GPs who don't bulk bill anymore. Well, I understand why, because they've got so many overheads.
Yeah.
Time you pay for everything, you're not left with very much. So look, you're right. We don't get into this for the money, but you still need to make a living.
Yeah, and I think if we don't shy away from it, as you said, set up your practice from the start. Value your worth as well as a person, as a person and as a therapist and a professional. And if people don't want to pay it, they just find someone where they will pay it, and then other people will come and go, yeah, I'm happy to pay this because you're providing an amazing service that I need specifically for me. Maryanne, I've really enjoyed this. We could talk all day. I love talking to social workers, and once we start, we tend not to stop. But plug your business. Where can people find you, like online?
Sure. So Mindful Life Wellness, as you said, I have socials, so Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, under that handle, Mindful Life Wellness. Got the kids podcast, Kids Mindfulness, Meditations, a podcast for kids. Yeah, you can find me there.
Awesome. And we'll put the links in the show notes so that people can just click on it and then they go straight to that. But the last thing I like to ask all my guests is to plug something that makes you feel good. And it's a bit of a pay it forward moment where you can give what's making you feel good to somebody else and then they can feel good as well.
Oh, at the moment, Pilates. I've just discovered Pilates with my daughter. So I'll plug Gia Pilates, which is next door to my business. Cool. So I guess she's someone in my building who's running a small business as well. Yeah, so enjoying moving my body mindfully, that taking an hour out of my day just to focus on myself. So it's been
love it. I love it. I did do Pilates for a while and men's yoga as well. And it's really, it is really a healing process because I had a bit of a back issue at the time, which came out of my burnout, actually. They couldn't diagnose what it was. And so through Pilates and men's yoga, I was able to iron that part out of my back that was really causing me a lot of grief. So I plug it as well. It's a great technique.
It's natural. It's fantastic. Excellent. Well, thank you, Simon. Great talking to you.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you. And we'll keep in touch and see how things are going. And thanks for coming on.
Excellent. All the very best with Mindful Men.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode, and I hope you got some value from it. If anything triggered your mental health today, please reach out to your support networks. Also, if you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your mates. For more from Mindful Men, you can check us out on Instagram and YouTube, and I'll throw the links to these pages in the show notes below. But until next time, stay mindful.